Welcome back to the Future Dreamers podcast, everybody. I am so excited to have Angela McKay on the show today with us. She is a career intuitive business coach who uses tools like tarot and other forms of mysticism to lead people to their on-fire dream careers. And I'm so excited to get into a bunch of very interesting yet practical topics today as we talk about how to find your intuition, how to use tarot to uncover blocks and things that might not be clear to you on the surface. And Angela's just going to talk us through her journey of how she went from HR exec to a leader helping people use their intuition to find their passions and actually turn it into a career that lights them up. So Angela, thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to talk to you. That was just like the base level intro, but please tell us in your own words who you are, how you serve, and we'll get into it from there.
Sounds great. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I worked in corporate for over 25 years. I was in HR for 20 years of that. I resigned as a senior vice president of HR to go full time into my business where I serve.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Just like, got to give you some props.
An adventure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I serve as a career intuitive and a certified vocation coach. So I did pursue certification through ICF. I have that really great skilled foundation, but the career intuitive, there's not as much training that goes into that as much as natural skill and believing that skill and fine tuning that skill. But I like to help purpose-driven professionals. So the people who come to me are the people who are driven. They prefer meaning, they prefer impact, they want to make a difference. So they're in that, like, there's got to be something more to this place in their career. And I say that I take them from a great on paper career to a feels freaking great. I like to think of it as like going from the gold star on the top of your paper to like heart on fire work, because we work so much that while it doesn't have to be your purpose, we at least want it to feel good.
That's amazing. I think it is so important in this day and age, especially with the climate of corporate America, to like have coaches who are supporting people who know they're meant for more. Some part of their intuition is talking to them and saying, like, I want a career that lights me up. And so the fact that you not only have like a certification of helping people with the nuts and bolts of finding a career that's going to make sense for the entirety of their lives, but you're bringing that intuitive guidance and heart-led service is so important in this time. So I would love for you to tell us how you actually made your bold jump from, decades in the corporate world, leading, being like a top VP of HR in corporate America, and like just like the bold, like very courageous decision to go off into this area that part of it, yes, you can get your certification, but there was so much that you probably had to be a self-initiator and a self-leader to really define the niche that you're serving in. So can you just tell us what that journey was like for you?
Yeah. While there was a moment of bold jump, I would say it was actually more of a like slow trickle.
Cool.
Yeah. So in my HR career, I did get to a point where you just have that, like, something was uncomfortable. So in that meant for more, it's just, I wasn't loving what I was doing in that very moment. So I actually started an exercise beside me of tracking what it is that I liked about my work and what it is that I didn't. And I would just bucket everything that I did on that piece of paper. And I found that everything I loved was like one-on-one conversation, helping people to work through something, even if I had no business of knowing like details and specifics of what it is that they were talking about. So I didn't identify that as coaching at the time. I just did more of that. I just integrated more of that into my job so that I was doing more of what I like to do. Until finally one of my colleagues said, I know somebody who's offering free coaching sessions. And I had an immediate yes. And it was a yes to, I want a session. And it was a yes to, I want to be a coach. So like both of those came at once. I signed on for coaching with her. It was initially to kind of get me further into my HR career and decide what I wanted to do. And by the second session, it was like, how do we get this coaching business started? So like the certification is kind of just a cherry on top for me, because if I go into the more professional and executive coaching, they're going to expect that I have that. But a coach is a coach at heart. So certification or not, a coach is a coach at heart. But I stayed within my corporate job while I opened my business, and I worked it part-time. The organization knew everything about what I did, including the fact that I read tarot within it. So I ran that on the side. I worked my full-time job. I got the coaching certification. I implemented a coaching program into my organization. So I was making it part of my job, again, doing more of what I love. And then there just came a point where I had been with the organization for so long. So when I say 25 plus years in corporate, it was with the same organization that I worked with.
Wow.
So I really grew up there, and it was important to me that when I left, that I felt really good about how I was leaving things. And there came a point where I felt really good about how I would leave things. I was just feeling more and more strongly pulled towards working with people on a whole person level, which I couldn't do within the corporation. And then I made that bold jump. I mean, there was quite a buildup, and I think that's what people need to understand is to like jump into your vision or jump into your dream. It doesn't always have to be this like drastic life change. It can be really small pivots until you feel comfortable enough to make the more risky jump that you need to when it's time.
Such an amazing thing to bring up because, you know, intuition leads us to kind of, I feel like intuition is this thing that helps us throughout our growth and that sustains us in times where we don't know exactly what's happening, and almost is part of our mindset to continue motivating us to like building a dream that, like you said, doesn't necessarily happen overnight and may have to unfold in stages, and just helps keep us in that place of motivation that it's worth continuing to build until you actually start to see some of the seeds pop up from the soil and you're like, okay, this is real, this is really happening. And so for people to be able to find your services and know that someone went through that journey on their own, which it sounds like you had the support of a coach, but really bringing in your own tarot and your intuitive gifts is just so valuable for people who may not have a clear path of how to make a career transition that may take time. And so as we're talking about that, I think that leads us into the next question I want to ask you, which is, what was your personal journey into deepening your intuition, learning how to trust it, kind of learning how to wield your intuition? And then if you can kind of layer in how tarot came into your life, what that journey was like, and how they really kind of play together to help tarot be a tool of playing with, speaking with, working with your intuition.
Okay. I don't know how clearly I will answer your question, but I'm gonna dive in.
Take
redirect or remind me as needed.
Yeah.
But my personal journey, it was hard and it was messy and it was dark. So what people refer to as spiritual awakenings, or what I like to refer to as spiritual reactivations, because they really are just these things that have already been within us that are just being tapped into and turned up. So they had been buried and now we're being asked to bring them forward. It was a really complicated and messy and lonely time when all of that started to kind of stir up within me and change my personal view and my world view. And it felt so lonely that was actually one of the driving forces for me when I did open my coaching business, of making sure that however I was positioned in a way that if someone was experiencing that for themselves, so here they are working in corporate and they're experiencing that they would be able to find me so that they didn't have to do that process alone. So it was just a reactivation of a lot of the intuitive side. And even in the example I gave of how I went from HR and into the coaching side and into the intuitive side, the moment of I'm gonna write a list about what I do or don't like, that was an intuitive moment that I went ahead and followed, and it led to something. The person coming and saying there's someone who's offering coaching sessions, and I had 2 immediate yeses. Those are yeses I could have ignored, but I grabbed them and they led me to something. I think we tend to overcomplicate intuition, where it's rather just these really small moments that if you pique your curiosity in one regard or the other, you follow that curiosity. It can really be that simple. But the tarot itself, it was a number of years back, and I was just scrolling online, and I saw I hadn't been searching for tarot decks, but I saw a tarot deck and I really loved it. The imagery was just so pretty. So it was just an easy, I'm going to get this. Of course, right? Because that's what we would do. So I got the tarot deck and I opened it and I looked through it and I loved it. And I started reading it right away. It felt like something I had done before. The learning curve for me was really, it wasn't much of a curve at all. I immediately felt comfortable reading for other people. And I know that a lot of readers, it's really hard to make that jump into reading for others. And it felt really natural. I have no doubt that this is something that I have had experience with before. Yeah. I was really comfortable. Go ahead.
Just high five on that. Just really love when you find, it's like remembering a gift. Like what an emotional, magical moment that probably only you can really understand for yourself. Even though I think that we, like, I've had moments like that a little bit, and I've heard stories of people who have had like recollections of like past life gifts. But at the end of the day, like that specialness, only you can truly understand like the realness and like the details of your internal world that like received that. And so all I can do is just like be excited for you that you had that. But thank you for sharing that, because I think that other people may have different flavors of that experience in their life, and just knowing that other people have had that and that it opened up complete new worlds for them in this life is so awesome. So sorry to interrupt, but keep on going.
No, thank you. Because on the flip side, I didn't hide it either. Often when people start going into the more spiritual side of things, or woo, if you want to call it, there's that kind of closeted woo that happens. And I just didn't have that. If it's mine and I want to own it, then I'm going to put it out there. When I was in my corporate career, I did have to keep it kind of behind the curtain in some regards. So like when you think of LinkedIn, I was a representative of the company. So my business had its own page, it was out there, but like that, my page didn't have it at that time, it does now. But I'm comfortable speaking about those things, so it made it really easy to integrate into my work. When I had the idea to start coaching, there was no doubt that tarot was coming with that. I actually think coaching and tarot, or coaching and intuitive arts, go really, really well together. I think that the intuitive side leads, because it just starts to like pull things out of people, and then the coaching is what then allows them to take what got pulled out of them and translate it into something that they can do in real life. I really do prefer like the intuitive side to lead.
Well, and just to like reflect back to you, I love that you just went, like, you really trusted your intuition that tarot was right for you. And I know that must have been kind of supported by your experience of it just feeling very natural from the beginning, as soon as you got your first tarot deck and had these like memories, or just like, you know, internal feelings of like, this is for me. And so the fact that you had that maturity or strength or whatever it was within you that allowed you to not hide that, I think is also just really something amazing to model for people who are journeying into this new world where you see people doing magic all over the internet now, and I love it. Like, I just love when I see people just going for their gifts and not hiding that they are using a right brain, left brain approach, and really marrying the two, because I think that has it's such a beautiful harbinger of a future where we could transform the world in an evolutionary way, not like a revolutionary way where we have to like get rid of a ton of things. It's more just like, how do we bridge technology? How do we bridge traditional career paths and evolve them into something that's more, connected to the heart? And so, just like you said, when you're coaching, you let the intuition lead, and then you bring it into the tangible with your, tangible coaching skills. So I think that's really awesome. And leads me to the next question of intuition as data. And I know this is something we talked about before we pressed record, but as people learn to trust their intuition more, and just learn like how the different, and like you said, you don't need to always overcomplicate it, that it could be something as small as an intuitive nudge, like, or just an opportunity that drops in your lap. So can you tell us a little bit more of how you see intuition as data, and maybe explain the concept of intuition for people who don't have like a concrete understanding of it, maybe a little skeptical, and weave in tarot like wherever that makes sense for you?
Absolutely. So we'll see if I get a little soapboxy here. But previous HRB and then current me, I am a strong believer that whole person belongs in the workplace. Mind, body, soul, whole person belongs in the workplace, in the way of like, people shouldn't be expected to check soul at the door. And when it comes to corporate, like, there's a lot of good, because it provides really stable employment. It provides more stability for economy. Like, there's a lot of things that are good about corporate when it comes to providing jobs and roles for people to tap into, for them to serve in purpose in a way that they don't have to start their own business, because entrepreneurship is not meant for everybody. Not everybody wants that.
It's so hard.
I I know. Like it's growth. It's a lot of growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I believe that whole person belongs in the workplace. And with that, it means that the softer side of things or emotions that people prefer not be in the workplace, they really need to be there. So I believe that intuition and emotions are the language of the soul. So those are the things that are talking to you, and they're not currently invited at tables. They're disregarded or they're talked over. We don't really get to slow down and speak for those. We don't get to say something doesn't feel great about this and then not be ran over. So I do a lot of work with people and finding a way that they can bring that to the workplace. So intuition as data. We are all intuitive beings. We were born intuitive. We all have intuitive senses. It's through conditioning that those start to get buried, that we start to lose trust in ourselves, both by what we hear from others and by what we tell ourselves, until there finally comes a point in life, call it that spiritual reactivation, where something just has to shake loose because it's trying to emerge. When something gets stifled, it gets more and more uncomfortable, mentally and physically uncomfortable. Intuition is, like, if we want to really boil it down to something really simple, it is just your senses. It is the sense that can perceive energy from within you, from outside of you, from far away from you. It can perceive energy. So it gives you those just little nudges because you're picking up on something energetically around you. So intuition as data belonging at the table, we bring a lot of things to a table, especially in corporate, as far as information goes, but we really don't slow down to allow those intuitive nudges to be felt out. Like I said in the example of something doesn't feel right. Now, some people see that as, well, that's just really inconvenient that you're saying that, we need to move forward. But those need to be heard out, because then once it's spoken, it can be fleshed out as to whether that was fear of ego that was popping up, or whether it was something deeper and truer than that we really want to take some consideration to. So yeah, intuition and emotions are the language of the soul, and I believe that we should be embracing those fully in the workplace to be making like the best decisions that we possibly can. So then tarot, you asked how to like weave tarot in. Yeah, on this front, so there's like two different sides of that. And one, like I'll say that I have a real strength in marrying the practical world with the intuitive world. Again, that's my comfort zone. I love doing it. I don't care if I get looked at oddly for it. It makes a lot of sense once you sink into it. So there's two different things. So like on the side of a reader, when I'm reading for somebody, all I'm helping them to do is I'm reading the energy of a situation. So we talk about that, like you're just perceiving the energy. So I'm pulling those cards and I'm reading the energy of a situation as connected to that person and what they're experiencing. It then allows us to open their perspective, because we can only see what we can see. That's like one of our biggest limitations as humans, is we can only see what we can see. So we've got to give a bigger story, much more perspective, so that you can then look at that and say, I want to, or I don't want to, and make your own choices with that. As far as somebody using it for themselves, I think we were talking about this before we pressed record, is that intuitive arts like tarot and astrology can be used in a very practical sense. They are real life tools that can be used. I think I had said, like, you don't need to swap out your dining room table for like a table with crushed velvet and a crystal ball to live a more spiritual or woo lifestyle. They can look very practical. So there's actually a course I ran called Tarot Made Easy that helps people to integrate tarot and oracle cards into their personal development without having to know a thing about the cards, so that it doesn't feel heavy, it doesn't feel like out of reach, but it allows them to start opening their perspective on their own. Because again, we can't see ourselves. Like I'm a skilled coach for others. I'm a horrible coach for myself because I can't see past my own vision. So the tarot and the oracle really help to just open that up for you and have other considerations that you wouldn't have had.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I have a beginner's tarot deck that has like all the little stuff on it, and every time I, pull cards, I'm just like, thank you. It's like having a conversation with a partner that isn't in a physical sense, and like exactly like you said, it opens the breadth of information that your ego or whatever potential fear you might be stuck in right now wouldn't let in and wouldn't allow into the conversation. And then just so much more comes from that perspective shift or just broadening your perspective. So I love that. And as you were talking about intuition as data, especially in the corporate world, I think as I got into the corporate world in like the early 2000s, and I've seen the corporate world change, as I'm sure you did as you moved through it, but I think it was a very like left brain dominant kind of environment, and in a way that's kind of just like shutting off a potential information source, as you were talking about, that could make business run better. It could make the interpersonal dynamics of people working together in groups work better. And so I think that may be, the next evolution of like, as humanity is definitely going to need to work together more and more as everyone watches the news and weather gets crazy and all of these things, is that adding in all the tools that we can and not discounting any because they might be woo is just like a growth journey for humanity. So thank you for being on the leading edge of helping us figure that out.
And you too. Like, I really do believe that we're going to be leaning further that way. I think that those that are more on the practical side, I think those that are on the corporate side will start to embrace the intuitive arts in their decision making more. I'm happy that there's people like me and you there to help once they do get a little bit more curious about it. And like a little something I've noticed. So it's only been recently that I started so I do tarot card for career reels on Instagram, and I post them to Facebook as well. They've always done really great on those platforms. I didn't have them on LinkedIn. I started putting them on recently. And for anyone out there that's like, ooh, I'm like really interested in this, like, know that you're not alone. Because on LinkedIn, I get more back end interaction than I do public interaction. So the liking and the commenting, yes. So it's like anyone out there that has that curiosity, like, know that you're not alone in it. There's lots. There's us that it's wide open about, but then there's lots of people too that are in that same place, but they're not ready to be public about it. So it's just a little thing I've noticed.
I love that. That's hilarious that, people might be shy about clicking the like button, but they're gonna slide into your DMs and be like, thank you for being open, and thank you for and I've actually kind of like thought about like at some point I'm gonna go a little more open in the LinkedIn world and just people who I used to be like database engineers and like all of the tech stuff, and just be like, astrology.
Yep. Yeah.
It's hilarious. It's funny. It's worlds meeting. And I think that really when I use astrology, I always tell people, like, I'm never saying you're going to predict like exact events with it. It's exactly a tool for sharpening your intuition, and like there's no need to prioritize one. When you make a decision in a business context, you're often like, you need to look at multiple sources of information and then balance them towards what the goal and the feasibility is. So this is just adding another tool to the toolbox. And so I think that's really fantastic. So as we kind of like continue in this conversation, I wanted to talk about a little bit more to the tarot side. So say you are beginning to work with a client and they're coming in with, just this intuitive desire for change. Maybe they don't have like a clear path of how to do this. Can you kind of walk us through how you would actually use the tarot, and maybe talk about archetypes or just like whatever is in your skill set that allows the tarot to bring that conversational value that then gets tangible as you bring the coaching in? I'd love to know more about like that piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So integrating tarot, I do it on both small fronts and large fronts. So like a really popular service would be the career clarity reading, where it's just 1 hour. It's just one session. They're coming in with kind of where they are in their career and what their vision is, if they even have a vision. And the reason that I like it is, and with my intuitive senses, part of it is in hearing and seeing. So I make people talk to me for a little bit because I end up hearing some of what they say. I'll say like, I hear it in bold, and I pull those pieces out. And I could just pull those pieces out. I set them down and like I write them down, and we come back to them. As they're going through that conversation, I'm asking them questions, and each question they ask, I pull a tarot card for. So I'm building their reading as we go, so that in the second half, I can flip those and read what the cards have to say in combination with those pieces that I pulled out from their conversations. We build this whole package that allows them to, it basically puts like a clear light on their career path, and then the action steps that they can take next from that session. So that's like if they just want like I need help, and we do a quick session.
Sure.
But as far as like the 5 to 6 month engagement, I use tarot in a few different ways. So there's very intentional places that I put it, like right at the beginning and right at the end. We're talking about like what to embrace and what to let go of as they kind of embark on that coaching journey with me. So something to be aware of, to let go of, and something to really embrace. We do that same thing at the end, like they're graduating from the program, if you will. And it's like, okay, like now as you go on like this hero's journey here of your own, something to let go of and something to embrace. And then there's tarot throughout the engagement as well. It's really great for breaking up sticky spots, because it's one thing to hear yourself say something. It's another thing to hear like me say something. But then when we pull the card and I just read what's in there and it connects or it affirms, then it's like, it's harder to dispute the card than it is to dispute us, which is so funny, because you think it would be the other way around, that it would be easier to dispute the card, but it's harder to dispute the card when it's giving you what it's giving you. And I agree with you, like I don't use it in a predictive sense. I can't give you timelines or the color of your soulmate's hair. Like I can't do those sorts of things, but I can read the energy of a current situation so that you can make choices for where you want to go. And like even in between session support, if they have something that's sticky, they can just send me a quick message and I'll pull a quick card to give them some insight into what's going on. So it's both intentional and weaved through. However, on like I think you mentioned the archetypes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the tarot, there is the major arcana and the minor arcana. The major arcana goes from the Fool to the World. The major arcana are larger life energies. They're usually going to hang around for a little bit longer. They've possibly been hanging around your entire life and something that you kind of contend with on a regular basis. It depends. Whereas the minor arcana are more day-to-day transitional things that you're inside of. So if I do a reading or I pull cards and there's major arcana in that reading, I'm going to give more weight to them because they're kind of dominating that reading. And the way that I look at the major arcana is in the coaching that I do, I work with clients on the hero's journey so that we can acknowledge that we're in a hero's journey, often small and large. We go through many. So when we think of that journey of the Fool, which is where that major arcana starts, and where he is along that journey, like which character or which card he is playing with at that time, it just kind of helps put perspective for my client as to what they're navigating in their own hero's journey. The Fool, so like as I picture that major arcana, I always picture kind of two different ways. It's the Fool meeting that person. So like right after the Fool is the Magician. So his first stop is the Magician, where the Fool is going to gain tools that he needs for his upcoming journey, because as the Fool, he's naive and has no idea what's going on. So the first person he meets is the Magician, and he gains his tools from the Magician. But he also learns that things aren't always what they seem. So this first meeting with the Magician, it's twofold. So the Fool gets to meet him, but then that also gets integrated into the Fool. So he has grown, in a sense, by gaining that and integrating it before he moves along on his journey. So especially the major arcana, when we're looking at those archetypes where you've got like the Empress as the mother and the Emperor as the father and the Hierophant as the spiritual leader or the religious leader, like we're going to look at that as a specific energy of its own and how that is playing into that person's life or their career path. When we talk about career, it's not just about career. So that's why I say life or career path.
Sure.
And what that means for them in that bigger energy that the majors bring. Does that make sense?
Total sense. And I love how, thank you for bringing up the difference between, sort of the gravity of the energy that the major arcana kind of bring to our awareness, and then kind of the day-to-day, maybe like immediately impactful tactical information that the minor arcana might kind of like allow us to get clarity about. And the fact that things are a journey. and the fact that as you go through the hero's journey, you have different sets of lessons, different sets of curriculums that you're going to be traveling through, and how important it is to integrate those lessons as you go, because you're trying to add to your quiver of, and that helps sharpen your intuition. Maybe you didn't have discernment in a certain period of your life. I know, Lord knows it took me long enough to sharpen mine. And so as we just kind of bump into walls and then realize, like, well, what were the root cause issues that kind of like led to these situations? And then realizing, like, aha, but that situation taught me so much. And as I integrate that now is part of my magical tool set. My intuition is sharper and will allow me to go into the next piece of my journey that might be the next level up for me, that I will learn more lessons in, but I'm now more prepared for it because I, paid attention and integrated this first part of my journey. And so, it's like the fool as an archetype, I think, is like such a beautiful, it's like, if a journey can have so many things involved in it that if you knew everything about the whole journey, you might be too scared to go. And so the naivete can be like an actual, like, something that's helpful in the beginning to say, you do need to go through this, but it's better if you don't know everything in the beginning. So I think it's a really cool archetype.
I adore the Fool for that reason alone, that like he's just down for the journey. And of course, when I say he, it's not gender specific at all.
Yeah.
Even the depiction of the tarot, no matter what you see in the card, it's not gender specific at all. But yeah, there's just that naive nature. But I mean, the Fool in itself is an interesting card because you pull it for somebody, and it's either going to be in the energy of, like, it looks like it's time to make a shift. It's time to entertain that thing that you were thinking about. Like, it's time to start getting really curious about it and not like worry what's going to come up, because you can't control what's going to come up, but like, let's at least start exploring. But on the flip side, it could be like, maybe now isn't the time to make that jump. Maybe there's some things that you need to sort out before you do that. Maybe you're doing it in haste because you're frustrated by something. So it's like, it just depends on the person in the reading as to what that Fool brings forward for us, or any of those pieces of that major arcana. But yeah, we're going to pay attention to those when they show up in a reading.
How wonderful to have, from the perspective of your clients, someone who has deep experience in the tarot, to be able to read the different kind of like levels of an archetype. Because I know when I work with archetypes, this is one of my favorite archetypes here, the monad, like kind of like showing you like that we are all beings, of consciousness, and we're all in constant evolution, seeking greater wholeness within ourselves, within our environments. And so I think archetypes as a tool, I kind of define them as universal characteristics or patterns of behavior that anybody would recognize in any culture, and you can give it any certain character name, but like, we all have that breadth of experience, and we can recognize, a magician from a villain, from, like a hero or whatever. But they kind of, I kind of think of them as like sort of GPS guidance systems that get your brain into just like a zone of human behavior, but understanding that they have shadows, they have gifts, they have superpowers, and like even more gradations in between there. And so when an archetype comes up, whether in tarot or astrology, it isn't like extremely clear cut, but it almost allows you to like get your brain into a zone of awareness. And then I find that archetypes, and tell me how this kind of plays to you and how you've kind of seen this come through in your work, is that an archetype like does more work on you in the background once you introduce it into your awareness. I kind of think of it sometimes as like right brain software that like installs something into your consciousness, but as you contemplate it, it kind of like unpacks more, like its mycelial network gets into your brain, and then like can help you relate how that archetype, as it unpacks itself, like really is showing up in your own life, and can continue to teach you and work with you as it makes sense for whatever lesson you're in. So anything that comes to your mind with that, of just like working with archetypes and how that you see people kind of get tangible use from them.
Yeah. Well, as you talk about that, it's funny because yes to everything you said. And then there's another way that I see it happen too, where someone has like a negative reaction to the archetype. So I think of the emperor as one. So the emperor is a father-like figure. He's also a boss-like figure, very masculine. So someone might have a bad reaction to seeing that come up because they don't quote unquote like that or want that or have any identity with that. However, then we're able to acknowledge one, that resistance shows up. But whenever resistance shows up, like I'm the person that's going to make us face it and figure out why that resistance is there. Because then that's when in the background, like you said, all that stuff can start kind of unfolding and integrating into your life, because you start to like source why you have that reaction towards that archetype, that figure, so that you can lessen that resistance and start to figure out what it is that is good about that and what it is that you don't prefer about that and how you like to show up in that and what made you not like it so that you don't show up in that way. But whenever I see that like bold reaction to it, like we're going to pay attention to that, because it's the same sort of thing. It's not a it's a no. But
Sure.
like you said, like these are all part of us in some regard. So maybe you're not ready for that yet, but it came here for a certain reason. What was the other question that you asked? Something about...
Well, I was just talking about like just well, I think you kind of answered is like, how do you find the actual experience of working with archetypes? And so I love that you brought up that, like, you know, when astrology, tarot, like it's not all just like glitter and unicorns, and like you mentioned in your awakening journey, like it can be so lonely. I've gone through that myself, you know, and again, it is just so related to the hero's journey that there are going to be times, if you truly want to make alignment come into your life, especially, you know, I grew up in the 80s. I don't know how old you are, but like I was not getting the, like, I was like, my parents were like, Catherine, go to school, get a job, go to college, don't get arrested, and just like do the traditional life, because that's what's safe. And so I think as we enter this new world where, you know, the democratization of the internet has allowed people to create businesses of all types and stripes, invent new businesses just like as they, you know, listen to their intuition. But the journey of like finding your radical authenticity can be deeply scary, lonely, all the fear facing. And so these tools of intuition, and I think, as you mentioned, like bringing in maybe like a bit of an archetype that could cause resistance or fear in people, is such an invitation into like, face the fear though, because there's something on the other side that wants you to move forward. And I think that's such a beautiful part of archetypes. Like I sometimes see in my astrology, when I have like a transit that's beginning, that's, you know, like one of the larger, you know, the outer planets like Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and you're like, oh God, what is this gonna be? And you know, you can have that initial fear, and then, but the practice of learning to surrender. And so I think, you know, like as you mentioned, archetypes in tarot can help usher you into that and maybe give you clarity about how to like orient yourself to move through that journey.
I love that you mentioned that, because I'll always tell people that every card has light and shade. Every card has light and shade. I always say, like, I sound like such a weirdo, but I won't like judge myself, but I always say, like, I like the dark. Like, I'm not afraid to go into the darker places of myself. I'm not afraid to go to the quote unquote darker places of others with them. I love going to the darker...
I think you're a Scorpio rising, so...
I am a Scorpio rising.
Okay, so yeah, so tracks.
Yeah, I love going to the darker places, and I love shining light on the darker places, and I love when we get to give light to the darker places, because we all have them, but we just hide them. So I also like to be with people when perhaps something that we're perceiving in either their astrology or in their tarot or just in like that intuitive pickup, maybe it has some struggle. Okay, so like when people hear struggle, it's like, oh gosh, no. It's like, no, like this human existence is full of struggle, and it's full of struggle on purpose. Like we are here to experience that struggle because we grow through that struggle. That's why I also don't love predictions, because people can get wrapped up in the what is going to happen and then completely remove themselves from the what it is that they need to be doing in this present moment. But like a major arcana card like the Tower. So the Tower is this building that has been struck by lightning and it's crumbling, it's falling down. It's a very destructive looking card. So when you get the Tower, you can't help but feel like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen? It could be tiny. But the point is with the Tower is that it falls down so that it can be rebuilt in a better way. So there's just something in your life that's going on that just, it's not aligned with you anymore, and it's gotta go. So like, in some way it's going to start breaking up so that you can align and build in a better way. So to have somebody with you in those moments when those struggle points come up, to say, all right, like, struggle happens all the time, let's remember that first, and like, you still have free will. You are still making your choices, you are still living your days. Like, this isn't a lightning is going to strike your building, like literal meaning. So
yeah. No, I love that. And as you were talking about like loving the shadow because it helps illuminate the light, and the fact that you are a Scorpio rising, you know, like that being in your first house, being like your unique spark that you're going to bring to the world, and it's going to infuse into all the other ways that you become a creator in this world. And the fact that you have your 10th house, it is like very Virgo influence, so you have this like analytical capability, but it's also the healer, and like has the capability to be the leader because it's like right there with your Leo. And so I love that. One of the things about the Scorpio archetype that I just love is that it's not just, you know, like the surface level like pop astrology of like, oh, it's mysterious and jealous. It is there, it brings deep service to humanity because it has that ability to recognize that everything is a cycle. And if you want to be like, if you want the fruit of the end of the cycle, you have to go to the depths. And so the power that exists in the human subconscious and the collective unconscious is so vast. But, you know, in this stage of human evolution, we haven't quite been able to tap it. And so scorpionic energy, especially with someone who's a Scorpio rising, who's always going to bring that latent, you know, or that just like foundational skill that you have, like you can partner with people to say, I will give you the guidance because I've done this before for myself, and I've scuba dived to the depths and had the like frame of mind and like patience to look around in the depths and say, what's here for me? Because something is definitely there for you, and then survive the ascent to the surface and utilize that as, you know, oh my gosh, I just like retrieved treasure from the depths. And so I think that totally is very, very towery, that, you know, like things can be like, oh God, like what's coming for me? But really it's like, you can't build on land that has a bunch of like stuff on it. You like sometimes need to clear away the old to regenerate structures that actually match what humanity, like the next phase of our consciousness and in someone's tangible life, like is meant to experience. But if we keep our old snake skin, we're gonna like feel like we're wearing clothes that are way too tight, and it'll suck to move around. So very, very on point that you have that scorpionic energy with like this healer leadership. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm the person who will like ask very deep, straightforward questions. So it's not like light and breezy weather conversation that's happening. Like I'll ask the really deep question, and what's funny is like as we dig into that stuff and they're experiencing it, I'm also like, I don't know if it's the Pisces compassion or what it is, that I'm like, oh gosh, like, is it getting too painful? Like, where are we now? But then it emerges out the other side. I'm like, okay, good. Like, there we go. Like, we've seen the thing and we're moving to the other side of it, but I can't help myself.
Yeah, well, and you have your Pisces at the bottom of your chart, like just powering up your 10th house of career with the Virgo energy. So it's like you have this deep empathy and like water sign, you know, stuff going on, but you have but like that connection to say, let's make it real, let's make it healing, and like let's figure out where this is going to take you in your life to like usher you into the next version of yourself that you deserve. And so like it is so funny how, like you were saying, when you pull a tarot card, you're like, can't deny that like it like the universe is echoing back to what you really need to focus on. And so it's just so funny and cool how these mystical tools have deep just, they are I call them a technology. Like they are information technology of energy that is unseen. So I love that this is coming into the the forefront of humanity, and as we're able to just connect digitally all over the world, we're able to, like, this conversation was such a sharing of how you've utilized this technology, not only to do things in your own life, but now you have a successful business that's totally based in service, that is just like lowering the ladder for other people to climb up to their potential. So it's really amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, as we've been going for a while, I want to make sure that people know how to find you, because I think anyone listening to this is going to have their curiosity really piqued, and you've like really kind of led us through like all of the ways that you have just this path of support, and you know how to wield this technology, and you have the deep skill set of someone who not only is like understood career trajectory being an HR exec, but the coaching that you bring to this to like make the mystical real and turn it into like tangible information. So can you share with us how people can find you, any programs you've got going on, and just like anything that allows people to find their way to you if they need to work with you?
Absolutely. So as far as social media goes, Instagram is my main platform, and I always recommend that people go there, Angela McKay LLC, just to meet me. And I say that because I've got the tarot card for career reels there. I do lives, bunches of content. So it's really easy for people to start to meet me and kind of feel what that vibe is and the sort of information I give. Then as far as like all of the information, my website is a perfect place. It has more information about my services and my background and how they can pick up on that. So I can see all of my programs. I do have a 5 to 6 month program, Work with Purpose Roadmap, but I'm going to be opening up Soul-Led Career really soon here. But a really great way to start with me is that career clarity reading, that single hour. You get so much information, and I just love doing them. So.
Amazing, amazing. Well, you shared so much with us today. This was an amazing conversation, but is there anything else you kind of just want to leave us with so that we make sure we get everything that's on your mind before we wrap up?
Can I pull a card?
Yeah, oh, that would be amazing.
Let's do that.
Let's do it.
So I'll pull just a card for the collective as kind of a send out message for us here and for everyone that tunes in. So I've got my deck. I always have my deck sitting to the side here.
Nice.
It's the Radiant
Which deck
Rider.
Is it? Awesome.
The Radiant Rider Waite by US Game Systems
awesome.
Inc. All right, so I'll say I ask for clear energy from crown to root, root to crown, and open heart to receive messages and the guidance and intuition to interpret them. I ask for my guides to be present to deliver the message most needed, and for the guides of the collective to bring forward the message that they most need. And I ask for the protection of Archangel Michael to keep the energy in the positive and the light. We'll just ask for a message to close us all out. Always have reactions. So we have a 3 of Cups. So this is in the minor arcana. The Cups is a suit. There's Cups, Wands, Pentacles, and Swords. So the Cups is of intuition and relationships and emotion. It's in the feminine. It's represented by water. So here we are right here. But what this is really telling me, so the 3 of Cups is at the point, it goes 1 through 10, and we're at the 3. So it's pretty early on in that Cups journey. And this is the point where it has gone from 1 to 2 to 3. So we're bringing in more into our world right now. So as like I'm looking for a message to give to everybody that everybody can resonate with, it's I want you to expand. Hold on, let me grab it. This isn't on the professional side of like expanding your network. So it's not quite like that. I always recommend expanding your network, but that's not what this is. This is, I'm going to call it that underground. So you remember how I was talking about the people who reach out to me on LinkedIn on the back end?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I encourage everybody to start finding like your real people. So the things that you're into, the things that you're curious about, I don't want you just networking on like that professional front or to like carry yourself forward in that regard. I really want you to start building out like the more whole you, the pieces of you that you don't let be seen as often. Like your people are out there, and I want you to start connecting with them more. Like this is a card of like pure joy. They're dancing, they have their cups in the air. Like this is that's a girl's night is what's happening right there. Like I really want you to connect with I really want you to just start connecting with the people that like being with them feels like belonging, and it lights you up, and it allows you to feel like heard and happy. So it's not a message from my business itself, but I felt called to close this out with a tarot message.
Love it. A renaissance of the allies. Party in the woods.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Angela, I think that was a beautiful way to end this conversation. Thank you for bringing in your channeling gifts to just like show us how intuition can be so powerful and just like a true example of magic working in real time. So I love this conversation. Thank you so much. And I'm so looking forward to everyone who listens to this conversation just diving into your DMs.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela.
Right, thanks.
Talk soon.
Right.
Okay.